All right, welcome to another great episode of the Drew Sutton Leadership Show. Today's spotlight episode is Lafe Taylor. Lafe is a longtime personal friend of mine, but let me get into the official bio. Lafe is a dynamic entrepreneur, creative leader, and tech innovator. He was the original Bitcoin founder in Lexington, Kentucky, before shifting to media and animation. Lafe is the creator of the animated web series Big Head. He's also the founder of the Facebook community Wakoinda, which has now been shortened to Coinda. We'll talk about that in the show. Bringing together like-minded entrepreneurs and innovators. With over a decade of experience in tech startups, Lafe's journey took a pivotal turn, blending his passions for storytelling and technology. Outside of business, Lafe is a dedicated husband and proud father of two beautiful daughters. And I got to tell you, when I'm stuck in the entrepreneur journey, Lafe is my number one dial to get my head screwed back on straight. So with that, welcome to the show, Lafe Taylor.
How you doing?
Lafe, this is so exciting to have you on the show. I knew that I wanted to have you on here. You balance out my rhythm because you're just like cool, like mellow jazz is like what plays in my head every time I think of you. I'm like, I gotta have Lafe on the show. You've done so much stuff. I mean, you have gone far tech, and then you've built communities, and now you're in storytelling and media. Before we jump in to all of that fun stuff, you got to run the gauntlet, just like everybody else. Are you ready?
All right. Yes, sir.
All right. Coffee or tea?
Tea.
Very nice. Coke or Pepsi?
Neither.
Neither. He just straight up said, it's like, I opt out. Wow. All right. What is your drink of choice then?
Water.
Good for you. I feel a little bit ashamed here at the moment. Okay. Summer or winter?
Summer.
East Coast time or West Coast time?
That's a good one.
Yeah.
East Coast. East Coast.
He says that, but Lafe is a night owl. Do-it-yourself projects or buy it finished?
Depends on the project. I'll say do it yourself. However, for utility purposes, buying the project sometimes is way better.
Yeah, I tend towards the buy it yourself, but occasionally I'll get a wild hair, and I have to do it myself. Are audiobooks considered reading?
Yes.
Yes. Correct answer, just so you know. And then the last and final one here: should ketchup be stored in the cupboard?
If there's no room in the fridge.
If there's no room in the fridge. Okay, so but for you, the primary location is the fridge.
Correct.
That's so funny. All right. Well, as you know, and as the folks know on the show, I just got my John Maxwell certification. Drew Sutton Leadership Show here. We're going to talk about leadership a little bit. So I'm going to read to you a law of leadership from John Maxwell, and I just want you to get your thoughts. If you have a story where you saw this in real life, I'd love to hear that too. Let's go with the law of the inner circle. The law of the inner circle. A leader's potential is determined by those closest to him.
Yeah, I would agree with that because, again, it expands your thoughts, it expands your knowledge base. And a lot of times the reason why, your 5 closest friends determine your outcome is because if you all grew up in the same location, had the same experiences, then you're limited to everybody's experience. So I would agree with that wholeheartedly.
Yeah, I love the way you put that. And that's one of the reasons you're in my life. Honestly, you bring me up. I know that we've had several very long conversations when I was stuck on different things, and I've deeply appreciated that. You're also good friends with the one, the only Lamar Wilson, Big Mar. That dude is a trip. We'll get him on the show at some point. But I've loved watching your all's relationship on social media. As like in person, we know each other too, but like on social media, you all are the friends that we all wish we had, right? You guys, yeah. So talk to me about that friendship. So you all were into Bitcoin and coins, digital cryptocurrency, when we were all like trying to figure out what cryptocurrency was. And I think a lot of folks still are kind of confused on that. But like, you know that scene where Katie Couric is talking to her co-author and they're like, what is the internet? And they're just like throwing darts at what the internet is. Like, that's where we all were. and you guys had already developed some coins. And so talk to me about that. What got you, how did you and Mar meet? And then what got you into crypto?
Okay, so I'll start with how Lamar and I met. So I was an independent contractor. I was working with the Urban League, and so was Lamar. I didn't know Lamar. I didn't know anything about him, and I was trying to go after their business for web development. And they were like, "Oh yeah, the ice cream." There's like Lamar does our website. You know, the ice cream guy. I'm like, "Why do you have an ice cream guy doing your website, right?" Because he owned Coastal Creameries. So
Oh,
long
that's
story,
right. Yeah.
yeah. Long story short, we had a mutual friend, Dwayne Smith. Is always give him credit. He was like, "Oh, I want you to meet my friend." You know, because I forgot his name and all of that kind of stuff. Because he was running the innovation center at the library. Lamar was, and so he introduced us. We started talking, and it was just like instant chemistry. It's just like my long lost brother. We talked, and then we immediately jumped into a project. What we call it is like the trial run, right? It's like, okay, we'll come up with an idea. We'll see if we can execute the idea within about a couple of weeks to see if we are compatible in the way we work with each other. And of course, that's the rest is history. We worked together for like over 10 years. You know, he used to come over to my house and we used to work out of my home office all the time. And then we just start ideating and building on ideas. And so that led us to we were doing service-based businesses, right? We were building websites, and then we slowly, actually, you know, I tell everybody we did everything that was possible to do on a computer. We did filming, we did, man, I used to design stuff for people. We did apps. We did just about anything you can imagine, and then we did one of the original websites for the Lextran. Not a lot of people know that. That Lextran, for anybody that's watching, is our local transit center here in Lexington, Kentucky. We did that, and then that actually made us realize that we don't want to do service anymore. And so we went from that into FIFA. So FIFA was our online gaming platform that we developed. We couldn't get anybody to really buy into it because at the time Flash was huge on the
Hmm.
internet, but we knew that HTML5 was coming, right? We've always been ahead of the curve, which kind of can set you back because nobody believes what you're saying. And so a lot of the game developers at the time, they didn't want to exit Flash. They were making good money. It's like, why do I care about Flash? And ironically, this was the same time that Facebook originally did an HTML5 platform and it failed.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it failed. And so we were one of those failures. However, during that time, we started venturing out west, right? So we went to the Game Developers Conference, and while we were there, we were ideating because of the platform, we were into digital currency. So we studied the laws around digital currency and how like even if the business fails, you still have to honor those currencies. So we started like understanding the difference between a game of risk, and a game of chance. Uh, you know, uh, Skill-based games and all of those things. So again, it's just studying laws that actually led us down a path, and we made an investor named Paul Braggio. He's an interesting character too. Paul was like, "Hey, do you guys know about Bitcoin?" And we were thinking big coin, right? BIG. And yeah, because we never heard of it. He was like, "Yeah, you really need to look into Bitcoin." And we didn't think anything about it because again, when you're in the startup space, everything you hear is a competitor.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
we was like, "Oh no!" And then so quickly, just to get cut to the chase, how we like literally started. I kid you not, it was a Saturday. It was a Friday night. Lamar, he was up studying Bitcoin and those kinds of things. And I ironically had a dream about it that Friday night. And then Saturday, he hit me up. He's like, "Man, I got to tell you what I've been doing all night." And I was like, "Man, I got to tell you about my dream." And
I'm gonna
like,
I'm gonna jump in there real quick. What I love about this portion of the story is this is 100% both of you. Like every experience that I've had with either of you has kind of led with that sort of a statement. And Mar will grab a hold of you and you're like, what am I about to get into? And then like he starts talking and you're like, what is he even talking about? And about 5 minutes into the conversation, the 17 highly technical threads that you were like he's pitching to you all of a sudden coalesce and you're like, holy crap.
yeah,
And then you have a very spiritual, big spiritual side to you, which I love.
yeah,
And
yeah.
and anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, and so that actually led us down the path. He's like, look, man, he's like, I want to study that. I was like, I tell you what, you go ahead and study that because I had the dream. I was like, I know this is the path. And I was like, you do that and I'll take over our business because we had a business called 212. And so I took over the business in terms of running the daily operations, clients and all of that. So he could study Bitcoin. And then from there, we just slowly transitioned over into Bitcoin. And then it was when we raised capital that we cut all the businesses off, because it was part of our stipulations in our raise. So that's how we got into Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, and yeah, the journey that entailed. So it was a long journey.
Yeah, and what I love about your story here is, I mean, you and Lamar got into it. If there was something to be getting into, you got into it.
Yes.
And that's kind of the way that the entrepreneur life is, right? You're stabbing around at things, you're making some money, you're moving, but you sat me down, you sat my wife down, and kind of talked about the stressors in the entrepreneurial life.
Yes.
Can you give the audience here a couple of your thoughts? Because I know that you've had this mentoring conversation with several folks.
Yep. Yeah. So a lot of the things that and it actually developed my approach to the startup that I'm doing now is you can't rush time. And that's one of the things that we ran into very early on, especially when I said we started off at HTML5 platform. We were just felt like we were just hitting the wall all the time, and we just wanted to rev the engine constantly, but it was going nowhere. And so we realized that it's like, okay, we can't change the things we can't change, but we can control the things we can control. And what we could control is our effort, and we could control the things that we learned and picked up on, right? We couldn't speed up an industry. We couldn't do those kinds of things, but we could control us, and we could control the outcomes of the way we thought about stuff. So that's one. Two, definitely take care of your health. That's one of the most neglected things, startup founders, because I don't hear about it as much now, but when we were young growing up, it was the workaholics, the guys dying at 45 and 50 from working too long and all of those kinds of things. So I always, anytime I meet a new founder, I tell them to take care of their health, because doing this is a lot of stressors. You have stressors in business, you have stressors in life, because all of it is a strain. A startup is literally, just think about it like a baby, right? It can't do anything until you nurture it. So what that means is you really don't extract any money out of it until it gets to business phase, unless you raise capital, which is why startups raise capital in the first place, because you have to find your market, product market fit. You have to find, even the price, like pricing. There's all kinds of adjustments and levers you have to push. You got to pivot constantly because your initial hypothesis is untested. So it's not rather, so you got to go from hypothesis to all of these different things to make sure that this concept works, especially from being an entrepreneur, because not a lot of people understand the difference between a business owner and an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur sees enterprise in something that may be nuanced for a specific location or a region. And so it's untested a lot of times, right? And so you are the tester, you are the R&D, and you're not getting paid for it initially. So that's part of it as well. And then also one of the other stresses is just dealing with the dynamics of partnership, right? Because the stress is so high, you have high stress relationships, and you have to deal with that in a way that's conducive to grow the business. So, because a lot of partnerships fail because they don't have the interpersonal dynamics to deal with the stress of starting a business. So those are like probably the top three. I could keep going on and on about it because there's so many different things that pop up, deals falling through, investors falling through, all kinds of things that you run into. So if you can't deal with stress, man, I feel sorry for you.
Yeah. No, and you told me, I mean, I had a couple of investors fall through on some stuff, and you told me about some spots that you had, and really some dishonest stuff. I'm not throwing anybody under the bus, and we're not going to go into it, but the entrepreneurial life is not for the faint of heart, and you need a good group of folks around you that you can talk it through. You can talk through when you're stuck. And I love the beginning of your story there. You were saying you and Lamar asked the original question, which is, do we work well together? So the first business was just a MacGuffin. A MacGuffin is a device in film that that doesn't matter to the film, like the Infinity Gauntlet is a MacGuffin,
Yep.
like it kind of doesn't matter, but it drives the whole plot, right? Is
Yep.
you all said, let's start a business as a MacGuffin, so that we can see if we work together. And then from there, you all started doing more serious stuff. I love it's a very cool approach, a very insightful approach to the fact that your partner is the key, and then
Yep.
all the other stuff is going to swirl around you. All right, so you did a lot of stuff. You've been a great mentor to so many people. You've built a huge swath of tech skills, and then a moment happened where
Yep.
you said, "I'm taking a hard left here, and I'm going to change everything that I've been doing in life." And I love this story. So tell us the story about the movie that changed your life.
Yeah, so I was on IG. I met a couple of artists when we were doing Wakoinda. We'll get into that later. And then I was like, okay, so I just started following a lot of different artists, and they was like, you got to see this movie. It's called Into the Spider-Verse. Everybody knows it is huge. This is Spider-Verse, and I was like, okay, I'll go do it. And I happened to go on my nephew's birthday because my daughters, they were, hanging out with my nephew, and they, were having fun and doing things. So I told my wife, I was like, let's go watch this movie. And so we went to go watch the movie, and I was like, yo, this is like the dopest cartoon I've ever seen.
Mm.
But so I was like, I gotta take my girls to see it, right? So the next day we took the girls to go see the movie. And if anybody knows my kids, especially when they were younger, they have a face like me. They call it the lay face, where they just have a flat affect, right? They'll just watch stuff. They won't show any emotion, anything like
Yeah.
that. And they sat through the whole movie, and then I was like, because you can't read their face. That's how I developed the lay face, right? And I asked them about it, and they were like super hyped about it. They were like so excited, and then it made me think. At the time, I was doing Code Command. So Code Command is me and my other partner, Obi Taylor, where we go into the school system and teach kids how to code. And so I'm always interested in engaging young people about innovation, technology, all of these things. And I was like, yo, this is really interesting because this moves them in such a way that, because I'm thinking about it from my perspective, but then when I saw my daughter's reaction, I'm like, okay, there were really no girls outside of Gwen Stacy in the film. And it was the cultural aspect, it was the storytelling aspect, there was a lot of things that were involved. And I was like, this is the key to reach people, not just kids, but people. And so I was like, this is what I want to do. I literally told my wife while we was in the movie, I was like, this is what I'm going to do. And I just started doing it.
Yeah, and you may have called me, or maybe I called you, like, very close to when you first watched it. Yeah, I
Yeah.
remember you saying to me, "This is what I was gonna do," and I was like, "I know that you're, like, kind of you do a lot of stuff," but I was like,
Yep.
"Man, this is a left turning." But no, it's been fun watching the journey, and I'm in love with story as well. In fact, one of the things
Yep,
that I
I
do, I
know.
call it culture scripting, and it's our job. My argument is it's our job as leaders to write the narratives that our folks need to hear so that they can fit in the culture well, right? It's our job to articulate the culture through story so that our team can get energized and say, "Yes, I want to be a part of this culture. I'm so proud that I'm part of this culture." So
Yep.
you took it to the next level. You literally learned animation. Like I remember you were
Yep.
throwing up like you
Yep.
just like 101, here's a circle that came down.
Yep.
And it eventually built into, and I may have gotten the name wrong. Is it Big Head? What's the
It's
show
Big
called?
Head Charles. Big Head Charles.
Big Head Charles. And if it's up on YouTube, I think, right?
Yeah, well, it's still in development. So that actually took me on a quick journey. So again, being in the startup space, I'm used to going from A to Z very fast. Right? It's
Yeah.
like, okay, let me study this, see what everybody else does, and I'm gonna do the opposite. Right? So the way that I basically circumvented the pathway into animation is I got like the very first thing that I did was I became lead character designer for a show concept, and I'd never done any of that before. Dude found me on the internet, like is actually man, his name escapes me right now. He did a Black Dynamite and the Boondocks.
Oh,
Carl, I can't think of his name. He just happened to hit me up. I didn't know who he was. I thought it was a joke. He's like, "Yo, I love your characters. I want you to do some concepts for me." So typically, the way I operate is you pay me up front, that kind of stuff. But I was like, I'm trying to learn, so I was like, okay, I'll just do it. He ended up paying me, but he was just like, I'm just pitching this, and so I did it. Did some concepts. He loved it. And then he brought me and introduced me to the studio that was producing it. And he was like, here's our new lead character design. I never done anything. I never done character turns. Because when you're a lead character designer, you develop the characters and you do character turns, like 360-degree turns. I never done any of that before. And so it's like, okay, Carl Jones, that's his name. I knew it would come to me. And so I was like, okay, this is how this works. And so from there, I just started studying more and more. I met some people on Clubhouse that took off. And so I met a lot of people in the animation space. And I started pitching shows probably like in less than a year of starting. Like I pitched to Disney, Netflix, Nelvana, which is huge in Canada, PBS, all kinds of things, because I just, again, when I start, I just steamroll through whatever it is I'm learning just so I can get to the end.
Yeah, no, that's super cool. I love the story there is that, you know, we can take a left-hand turn in our career. Like I was a chief engineer. The old joke is the difference between an introverted engineer and an extroverted engineer is an extroverted engineer looks at the other people's shoes, but we're all just right, heads down doing work. And folks are like, how'd you get into leadership? And I was like, listen, man, I want to make a bigger impact than what I can do. Like I can make aircraft great. I can lead aircraft design great, but I can't change the world. I can't make a huge impact on a larger stage unless I get into leadership and help people with leadership. And your story is kind of the same. You looked at your daughters and you said, this is what impacts people. And I want to be a part of this. And then you just learned the technical skills, steamrolled it, and then moved on. You threw out a thread I'm going to pull for just a second. Talk to me about the coding work that you do in schools, and talk to me a little bit about what makes that different than the traditional, like, here's your syllabus and, you know, make a hello world app.
Oh yeah. So it started with a group, Christian Adair. I give him all the credit in the world. When he was working with Fed County Public Schools, he was like, I have this group of young Black boys, right? He said we put them in other programs and they didn't really engage them. You know, we got pictures of them. They're playing ping pong. They're doing everything but coding, right? So he hit me up and he hit Obi up, and then so I didn't know about Obi until it started culminating. And so it was myself, Obi, and Lamar, because Lamar is an author. I was like, hey man, you want to do this with me? And then Obi came in. I was like, oh, we didn't know, you know, because he just hit up the people he knew that were in tech. Anyway, long story short, the difference between what we do with Code Command versus, I'd say, any other learning curriculum is the way we engage kids, right? One, you know, the fact that we homeschool, I understand how kids operate. And also for myself, I was the kid that hated school because it just didn't engage me enough. So what we do is we actually run it like a startup. We run it like a startup, and we're talking about little kids. Like we're talking about 8 to 11. We run it like a startup. We give them personal responsibility. They get shirts and badges. They have to check in. We actually pay the kids because we run it like a startup. So if you don't do what you're supposed to do, then you don't get your money, right? We pay real money. We pay cash, like real cash. And not only that, we introduce them to people that work at Facebook or Meta now. We've introduced them to investors, Andreessen Horowitz, all of those things, because I've had a lot of relationships, and we just have different people come in to engage the kids. We have people locally come in. And so we just engage the full kid. We make them peer program. We make them work together. Some days you get to choose your partner, other days you don't. It's like a work environment. You have to learn how to get along with everybody. And another thing that's different than I believe than other coding programs is the fact that we basically focus on what they're strong at, because everybody in a tech company doesn't do tech. So some kids are stronger at technology than others, and we reward the kids based on a whole litany of things. Like, okay, community. Are you building the community? How do you greet people when they come in? We teach them soft skills. We teach them social emotional skills. We teach them technical skills. We teach them how to interact with adults. We teach them how to interact with teachers. It's a whole lot of things. And again, it's instinctive because this is what we do every day. And so we just incorporate our real lives into it. And of course, myself and my partner, we're fathers. And so we bring that approach to it, and it's been quite successful.
Yeah, and you've been doing this for a number of years, over 5 years. How long have you been
Yeah,
doing it?
it's like this is our 6th year.
Yeah. So yeah, if you're on the show and you're listening and you want to find out more about that, really seriously reach out to it. It's amazing. It's changing kids' lives. It's in the school system, but it is not traditional school, and it is
Yeah.
touching the kids that are falling through the cracks. And I both love that fact, and I love the fact that it really works. It gets me excited. Okay, so now we're gonna switch here. You're doing something new. It's
Yes.
in line with the story work that you've been doing, with the creative work that you've been doing. So talk to us about your new startup and tell us who it fits and what gets you so jazzed about it.
Okay. The new startup is called Framey, Framey.co and Framey.io. We have a tech side and a service side. That's myself and my co-founder, Sequoia. Sequoia, I've known her for a number of years. Actually, Lamar and I met her at the same time. We met her at Draper University. Tim Draper was one of our first investors, and she also had a company at the time, and he was one of her first investors. And so we met, hit it off, been friends for over a decade. And so she hit me up and she was like, I got this idea, because she used to teach entrepreneurs how, to go about getting investment and all these things. And she's like, I got this idea. Can you help me? Right. And so she was like, I'm going to tell you about it. So she told me about it and I was like, yeah, I'm in, let's do this. So in 2 weeks we had an MVP. And basically what it is, it started off, it's quite different now. It's very nuanced because it's the entrepreneur journey. It started off as videographers on demand. And so the premise for the start was it was solving her problems. She was traveling to all of these different countries and different places. And she's like, I don't have anybody to film what I'm doing. Right. And
Mm,
so she had a conversation with, I can't think of her name right now. She used to work with Gary Vee. Had a conversation with her and she's like, yeah, this is a concept that, you should consider. And then so she ruminated on it, hit me up, and we started January 1st of this year. And since we've started it, initially it was just like, okay, we're just going to make this for us. We'll roll out the business. We're not going to worry about investors and all of that. But of course that didn't last. Because she used to be an investor. And so we just started like, okay, let's see what the new temperature is, because it's been so long since we both raised money, right? It's like, what's the
yeah.
new temperature? How are people going about it? What are the new barriers of entry and all those kinds of things? And so we just started having conversations. And the more conversations we had with VC, the more tech we started integrating, right? And so it went from just being videographers on demand to now it's like, okay, how do we make this faster? How do we make the process of shooting, editing, and getting it back to you faster? Because usually those things take the longest time. And so for us, we realized that the reason why edits take so long is because there's no pre-production, right? And so and then
So I'm gonna
go ahead.
stop you there because pre-production, the phrase pre-production may not
Yeah,
be familiar to folks.
yeah, I'm
I've
very very
actually dug into that a bit as I've been begun doing this show because I'm on. I think this is episode 26, and
congratulations.
yeah, man, it's been fun, and you learn so much, and then folks come on the show and you wanna have a talk. So explain what pre-production is and why it's so important.
And before I get into that, Drew does a great job of pre-production, by the way. So
Thanks.
pre-production, for lack of a better word, is just planning ahead. And so anything that you build, if you want to do it right, you want to plan ahead. And it's like you slow down to speed up. That's the old adage I used to follow, right? I do it for everything, even with tech, with design, with animation, all of that stuff. You slow down to speed up. And what that means is you take the time to consider what it is that you're going to be doing. And so pre-production, you start off with, okay, what is the initial concept that we're going after, right? So that's first, you got to have your concept. Then it's like, okay, what am I got the initial concept. I'm going to shoot it this way. So now you need a storyboard to really map it out and a shot list, right? And we did that on a whim for one of our customers because we like had our first customer and they was like, now what? Right? And so we was like, So we so we actually got them the shot list, the storyboard, and those things. And one, it put the customer at ease. It's like, okay, I know what's gonna happen now. I know that I wanted somebody to come shoot. Our first customer was for a podcast. I know what they're going to shoot. So now I can go, I know what they're going to shoot. I know when they're going to shoot, and I know how they're going to shoot it. So that put them at ease. And not only that, it gave the videographer, because again, you have to think, we don't have direct communication with the videographer in the sense that this is our first shot was in Las Vegas. We live in Lexington. I live in Lexington. Sequoia lives in Georgia, right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
we're not there. So we have to map it to where we can manage it from long distance and still get the desired result. Anyway, long story short, because of that process, the edit was done like in a day, and it was approved. There were no additional edits because it followed the diagram that was mapped out, and it was like, okay, let's start building this, right? Let's incorporate the technology of this into what we're doing, and then also, we're raising capital now to actually build out even further into the pipeline, because you got pre-production, you got production, you got post-production. So post-production is like the editing and all of those things. We utilize tools for that, but we're trying to speed it up to where it's all integrated, to where some people may not need a videographer because they have their own in-house videographer, but they can still utilize the tools to do the planning, to speed up process. We did a trial run in an event 2 weeks ago in Vest Fest, which was a large event, had lots of celebrities, and the video that we did with FrameMe had like over 400,000 views. And so it's those kinds of things to speed it up. And so we speed it up, we cut costs, and we produce high quality.
That's faster, cheaper, and higher quality sounds like a great proposition. Yeah, I'm actually putting together a leadership event here in Lexington in January. We're calling it Set the Stage. And the idea is that we're going to set the stage as leaders. It's our job to set the stage so that other people can shine, right?
Yep.
People are called to give their message, to do the work. It's our job as leaders to set that stage, which is really pre-production, right? When I got introduced to pre-production, I was going up, I used to do helicopters, and we were doing this test on a helicopter. And I went up there and we kind of took some parts off the helicopter and took a bunch of pictures, and I didn't have a plan. And so I had one in my head, but I was like, I got this. And first of all, I've flown to Canada to take a picture of this helicopter. And then there was 4 or 5 technicians that are all sitting there. They're at my disposal all day. So there's my time, there's the flight, there's the helicopter being down, there's these 5 guys. We're in a hangar. And we took the stuff apart. We took a picture of it, and I was tired, and I was like, that's probably good enough. And so I had them put the aircraft, like they were starting to put it back together. And I was like, oh crap, I need just one more picture. And I said, this is like 1 o'clock, and I had them all day. Right. And I was like, no, we're good. Cause I was embarrassed. I didn't want to admit that I didn't have a plan, and B, I didn't want to admit that I just had them waste a bunch of work. When you're doing aircraft work and you take a bolt out, it's a really big deal because you might strip the bolt. And so it's like very sensitive work. And I basically, because I didn't have a good plan, a good shot plan, or storyboard is what you're calling it. I wasted a bunch of people's time. And there was another moment in there where we had gotten a lot of shots, but they were all kind of ad hoc. And then I was like, I need something more, but I don't know what I need. And 5 people just like stood there. And let me tell you, like speaking in front of 100, 200 people, that's not a big deal because they're like, you're prepared, they're prepared. But you get a whole bunch of blue collar guys who are very intelligent. And then you stand there and you're like, I don't know what we need to do next. Whew.
Oh, yeah.
That is embarrassing. That is high pressure. I mean, your reputation is just dripping away by the minute.
Yeah.
So yeah, pre-production is super important. And, in business, we call that strategy. Yep. And I think I've been on a tear here, so I'm going to stop myself. But talk to me, and it's come out so much in your story here. Talk to me about the difference between folks that are amateur creators and folks that are technical creators. I mean, there's a big difference. There's a lot of technical skill in sculpting a masterpiece.
Yeah, and again, just to go back to your point before I lead into it, for me, it's an accumulation over time where you realize you start developing processes. Because going back to the creative, right? It's like, oh, I just want to make stuff, and there's really no plan behind it. There's no rhythm behind it. It's just like you're just constantly winging it. And then it's like, okay, doing this for so long, it's like, okay, I need processes in place. So it's like the way that I got to where I am now is putting processes in place. And so, for example, just dealing with customers and those kinds of things, it's like, okay, so if I'm always doing X every time I introduce myself, why don't I put this in writing? Make it a policy that I do this. And I mentioned the Lextran conversation earlier when we first did. That was our first big project, Lamar and I, when we built that site. Is more of an app, and it's like, okay, we need to change the way we collect money, because we did 50-50, 50 up front, 50 at the end, but it was such a long project that we didn't think about the middle.
Yeah.
And so I remember this was like the first time eating humble pie, right? And I was like, hey, can we change to where we get 25% in the middle? They're like, no, the contract says at the end. It's like, okay, because we had neglected other clients to do that project. And so sometimes a big project can kill a company because they didn't plan for that, right? They didn't plan for the middle. And so that was what I call one of my never agains, right? Like, okay, never again will I go through this situation. So that became policy. We started splitting out the payments, either all of it up front or you get incremental payments in between so your company can survive, right? And so that's another part of planning. And whether it be tech, I do the same thing. I do a game plan. I do if it's stories like where I'm drawing, I do sketches. I do all of these things first, and those things get approved first before you start moving on to the real project, so everybody's on the same page, right?
Man, so true. Man, there's so many words that are flooding my head right now. A good solid plan seems like you're not doing any work.
Exactly.
But the truth of the matter is, I used to say when I was heavy engineering, is that you design something at least 7 times. First of all, you have to like intuit it, right? That's number one. Then you draft it. Then you design it. Then you have to figure out how you're going to make it. So then you have to make tooling to make it with. Then you need to test it. So you needed like some test fixtures to work it out. And then you got to design the test fixtures, right? Like, and I think that people are like, oh, I have this really great idea, which I am 100% guilty. Actually, my family's pastime, like at Thanksgiving or whatever, is we do what's called HBIs. An HBI is a harebrained idea or a huge big idea, but you never really know which one it is. So they're all HBIs. And we kind of have this like, it'll be after dinner and then somebody will start giving crazy ideas and it's kind of a brainstorming session, kind of a comedy session. But it's just HBIs and that's what we do. But the problem with an HBI is a huge, big idea is the first step of at least 7. And that's if you had it perfect the first time. There's probably iterations in there as well. Getting an idea to market is crazy hard.
Yeah, it's extremely hard. And I don't think people give enough credit. I remember 37 Signals. They had a book. I can't even remember the name of it. Something to do with work. And they had like a metric. It was like, the idea is either worth $0 or worth $1,000 at best.
Right.
Because it's all about execution. It has people think that ideas like, oh, I'm a genius, I have an idea. It's like, so everybody has ideas, but what can you do with that idea? Can you bring it to life? Can you go through the gauntlet of all the opposition in the world to make it come to life? Right. And that's the difficult part that I don't think people understand. It's the work behind the idea that makes the idea valuable. The idea in and of itself is not valuable at all.
It's not. And that's an ego hit, right? That's an ego hit, but it's true.
Yeah.
I've actually gotten to the point now where when I have an idea, I Google it. Yeah. And I almost always find 4 other people that have between like a horrible website and a halfway decent website. Another friend of mine said to me recently, he said, listen, if you're 1 in a million, there are 3,000 people just like you in China and India right now.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah. And so that brings a little humble pie to the situation. Yeah. But after you eat your slice of pie, you're like, you know what? What's really cool is you can't beat me on execution, right? Like I've put the skills together to bring this idea to fruition. I have a team that executes it. I have the processes, if I can riff on processes for just a second, people are like, I don't want to, I'm an expert. I don't want to process. To which I say, do you want your heart surgeon to have a process, or do you want him to be an expert? Right? Do you want your pilot that's flying your aircraft to have a process and a checklist, or do you want him to be an expert? And the answer is, we all want the critical things in our life to be experts, but we don't want to be accountable to that process. Well, the process is there because that's good for you. So
process is everything.
Yeah, man. Well, all right. We're kind of running out of time in the show here. I'm going to give you a chance to wrap up. This is a funny spotlight show because we're really just highlighting the great Lafe Taylor, which is totally worth doing in the world. But if somebody wants to get a hold of you, they can reach out at hello@frameme.io. That's your email. Again, for those that are listening, it's hello@frameme.io, which has nothing to do with the criminal justice system. But no, seriously. So this is the current brilliant thing you're bringing into the world. It's Uber for videographers, right? So if you're going somewhere to a new city, and you want that documented well, you can now reach across time and space, or at least space, and choreograph a production team and get good videography the first time, so that you can tell the story that you need to tell and be confident that it's happening. Is there anything else that I should say about Frame Me?
Right now, again, the fact that we're a startup, we're slowly iterating and evolving, and we're integrating more and more tech day by day. And it kind of, I don't want to jump the gun on one of your questions, but so really heavy into AI, really heavy into learning all the new systems that are coming out, all the APIs. So the majority of my day is doing that. APIs, webhooks, understanding what that is, understanding how to integrate these new systems, because you got billion-dollar LLMs, large language models, which is what AI is. And so they have APIs that you can tap into. Most of them are for money, so they cost as well. So building a lot of those things into the infrastructure of the business. So we've actually kind of separated the service from the tech, so to where teams can utilize the tech and businesses can utilize the service of getting their video shot and those kinds of things.
Man, you mentioned AI, and I have a policy. I'm only allowed to pull 7 AI tickets a week. I'm not allowed to talk about it every day. I only get seven turns here. But no, seriously, there's some amazing work. It's not just ChatGPT.
It's way
I'm actually putting together in ChatGPT, so not even the stuff that Lafe can do. I have a narrative ChatGPT, so I'm like, hey, write me a good narrative. And then that narrative bot goes and talks to the character bots so that it can write a story for you. And I don't know what you guys are doing with AI, but AI is like having a PhD level employee who has no idea what you're trying to accomplish. So you gotta train the employee on your tasks. But I mean, AI is maybe more important than fire. It is one of the most important advancements that it's ever hit. So anyway, if you're listening and you're like, how does AI have to do with videography? Oh, it has everything to do with videography. So reach out to me. Yeah. All right. We are running out of time here. So I'm going to give you a little walk off the stage music. Why don't you give me a couple of your bullet points that you want to leave folks with, and then we'll close out the show. Okay.
Bullet point is businesses are hard to start, so get started soon. It takes longer than you think. Frameme.io, frameme.co. Reach out to us if you want to market your business. I'll do a 15-minute strategy with you, or my co-founder will, just to let you know how to market your business, because video is everything these days. That's why we're doing a video now. Also in terms of AI, get started. Like, don't wait, don't get intimidated. Just get started where you are, because it's going to be everything.
Yeah. Well, that's it. The great Lafe Taylor, my mentor, my friend. Thanks for being on the show. And with
Thanks for inviting me, bro.
We are out.